And super excited about this session. I think there'll be so much value for our audience this morning. How to prepare for an AML audit with confidence. And we're really lucky that we've got the very soon to be award-winning Calathea with us, Lucy Brown and Mike Jardine, which I really, we've done a couple of sessions with them before. It's always been invaluable. The level of engagement that we get from people on the chat box. I can see Lisa's made saying hello already from Sussex. Is always great. So feel free to use that chat box as we go along. Now, just before I introduce Lucy and Mike, just a little bit of housekeeping, if that's okay. We do have the chat box on the right-hand side. Feel free to use that. I will do my very best to manage that as we go along. It will be a slightly interactive interactive session today. I will be putting some polls up, so please engage with it. It helps us structure the conversation as we move along, gives us a little bit of material to go off as well, just to prove that we're live and we're not making it up as we go along. In terms of the recording, we always get asked about the recording. So in terms of the recording, we will be popping this on YouTube really quickly after the session, and then you'll get an automated email from us as well with a link to that recording, so you can watch it anytime. I'm pretty sure we'll pop it on our education platform as well, which is great. Okay, so without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen, and hopefully you can see Lucy and Mike as well. Before we get into the real meat of the session, talking about AML, a little bit of introductions to you both. Why Calathea, what you've done before that. No one mentioned Mike's tan. He's been in Dubai last week, so let's not do that. So Mike, over to you first. Just a little introduction from yourself and why Calathea.
Cheers, Kev. My background, as lots of you know, is ex-law enforcement, investigating serious organised crime and financial crime, both within the UK and overseas. Did 30 years doing that. Retired from the police and was working for the banks in investigating insider threats. And then since 2018, working for professional body supervisor, doing inspections, audits. And I was director of compliance for one of the professional body supervisors, where I met Lucy, and we decided to set up Calathea Solutions to provide basically a handrail through the legislation and how to make sure you were conforming to what you should conform. So you were not only conforming with the legislation, but also satisfying the requirements of your professional body supervisor and protecting your reputation as a bookkeeper and protecting the sector to identify any wrongdoing.
And Lucy, good morning.
Hi. So, I have a background in bookkeeping. So I ran my own practice from 2014, built it up. And then in 2021, I sold it to go and work for the supervisory body. And I would say I met Mike, but I'd met Mike before that. He was the inspector that actually did my AML supervisory inspection back in 2020, I think. So I've got that bookkeeping background that I bring to what we do. Worked for the supervisory body for nearly 2 years, getting the experience of understanding the legislation that much better. That's how we got to work together, really.
And just in terms of Calathea, and I'm going to throw in the first poll this morning, because then I'll potentially take us to our first question. Why Calathea? What did you notice about the advice that accountants, bookkeepers were sort of missing, and why you thought Calathea would plug that gap? And related to that is sort of the first poll here. How comfortable are you asking your for AML advice from your supervisory body? And that'll probably answer the question that I've just sort of said. And you hopefully you guys can see the answers starting to come in on the right hand side. So is that why you noticed with Calathea, you noticed that these education of members were pretty low?
I think it's fair to say that the supervisory bodies do have a lot of guidance, but they often find that it's not set out in a way that they fully understand, and this is where this poll comes from. We also see that there's an awful lot of fear about going to talk to your supervisory body. There are a lot of people that would rather almost get it wrong than trigger an inspection. They fear what the repercussion of asking what they see or fear is a silly question of their supervisor. And that's something we really wanted to be able to address. So we are able to answer those questions without any interaction with the supervisory body. It's completely separate from that, and there's no kind of repercussions of asking what, there aren't silly questions, but what might be thought or felt to be a silly question.
Yeah, we certainly see that at FirmCheck, and I think that's one of the things that we're seeing a lot of. And actually, you know, a lot of our questions aren't about the software per se. A lot of the questions are about what's been asked of me, and, you know, will this pass an audit and inspection? And just before we go into the first question, that, you know, about audits in particular, and obviously this is all about an AML audit with confidence. Here's the next question to everyone: how confident are you that you'd pass an AML tomorrow? AML audits in general, you know, is there hope there, or is there a low level of maturity from your perspective, guys, about readiness and being ready for a successful audit?
I think from our perspective, since we've been with doing Calathea, lots of people come to us so we can benchmark where they're at with their compliance. We find that a lot of people understand what they've got to do, but don't actually do it. And as we always say, if it's not written down, it's not happened. You've got to make sure that you document everything that you do and why you've done it. Also, equally, if you've not done something, document it. So there is to a great extent the knowledge out there of what they're supposed to be doing, but not actually following it through and creating the correct risk assessment documentation, and equally not having that culture of compliance, using it as a bit of a tick box exercise rather than tailoring things to your practice, using it as a bit of a tick box and not understanding why you do something. If you can understand why you're doing a risk assessment, why you're doing a whole of firm risk assessment, why you're doing policies and procedures documents, it all sort of comes together. And when we're doing audits with our clients, they'll say that to us. It's all come together now. We really understand how it all gels together, and we can understand now why we have to do this documentation. So there is hope. There is hope, and we're hopefully spreading that hope.
And when you say that they know what to do, but they're not doing it, why are they not doing it? And is it a case of, well, I'm not doing it because I've not been caught being the wrong term? And do you guys have any sort of fancy stats that I could share with anyone to sort of highlight that, Lucy?
I think people aren't doing it because it's a tomorrow job. It's always being put off to when we're a little bit quieter, when there isn't a deadline coming up. I know it needs to be done. It's not going to earn me any money, so it's not high priority. However, as we know, and as people fear, the fines from being caught out not doing it in an inspection are can be quite significant. So actually, it's got to be a priority job, not only to avoid that financial penalty, but to avoid reputational damage, to actually help you know your clients. That they're really important things. So yeah, I created a slide for you if you want to show that, just looking at some of the figures. So I took this from the HM Treasury Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Terrorist Financing Supervision Report for the year 2022 to 2023. And it's listing all the accountancy sector supervisory bodies and their total AML population. So the amount, the percentage of those inspected and the percentage of those found non-compliant in those inspections. So if you look at ACCA, it's only about 5% that are actually inspected in that year. However, nearly 96% of them failed their inspections. Now, I've grouped together the generally compliant and non-compliant findings, because unless you are fully compliant, there is an issue there. So a vast majority are not perfect on everything. It is worth reminding people as well, though, that the supervisory bodies do take a risk-based approach. So they will be looking for people generally that they don't think are compliant. So it's likely that if you have an inspection, you're not going to pass. That said as well, they need to test that risk-based approach. So there will be a certain percentage that they inspect where they expect them to pass. So don't automatically assume that if you are called up for an inspection, that they have already found you and you have already failed. But it just makes a bit more of a story about the statistics. They are very high non-compliance figures. However, there's a bit of a reason for it. So that the other thing to note is HMRC, who do supervise some accountants and bookkeepers, don't have to fill in this report to HM Treasury each year. So their figures aren't there. However, I did look online this morning at their published results. And for the same year, there are about 430 published penalties. And I know that this figure's been bandied about that they have masses and masses of fines. However, though all those fines are for people who haven't been supervised. So they've been practicing without supervision, and they've now either through their own choice gone to HMRC and said, look, I should be supervised, or they've been found out to be non-supervised. So of those 430-ish, I found 8 that weren't due to late supervision. So it's actually a really small number, again, there that are being penalised for not being compliant.
And looking at these numbers and looking at the poll there, where a lot of people say, so, okay. A lot of people saying confident. And then me and Mike were talking off air that, you know, we've had people adopt firm check, and they say, yeah, we just want to upload our historic documents and then that'll show us the gaps. And, you know, Mike, you said yourself, you know, people sign up to the Calathea service fairly confident, they just want help. But actually, by the time you get in there, it's not what you experience. So, you know, looking at those pretty high percentages, you know, from a supervisory body perspective, what is it that they're actually looking for then? And is there a sort of consistency across the board? Because those numbers are, you know, you've got the IAB there, or AAT that'll be down at 36%, whereas the ACC pretty high. So what are they actually looking for? And if people are confident, but when you go in, you are seeing the gaps and you are seeing the sort of areas of concern, what are the supervisory bodies actually looking for?
Well, ultimately, and they're looking for full compliance with the regulations. Goes without saying, making sure you've got all that documentation in place. But we have seen inconsistencies across the supervisors since we've been working with Calathea, where different opinions on what should be in a whole of firm risk assessment, what should be in policies and procedures document. So we always say, make sure that you engage fully with your supervisor, understand what they want. Okay, understand the regulations, what you've got to be conforming to the regulations, but also understand what the requirements are of your professional body supervisor, because they do differ with varying requirements. So that is very important. That's our opening question when we do an audit is, are you aware of anything that your supervisory body requires you to do to be supervised by them? And it does differ. And
is there anything, you know, if you were to say, and I agree, you know, every supervisory body is a bit different. What's the most important thing that a firm can have in place? Is it that knowledge of what the supervisory body is after, or is it something specific to them?
It's having that culture of compliance. When we do audits, it's a case of when we go in, have they got that culture of compliance? Do they want to comply with the regulations? Okay, it does take up time. It's not fee earning, although some of our clients were finding out they're actually adding a fee to the overall fees to include AML. I mean, I've recently sold a property and I had to pay £40 for the AML checks on me. Some accountants and bookkeepers are going down that route. So it's important to show you've got that culture and you've got that willingness to do it, and you're engaging with the supervisor and you're not burying your head in the sand. And if you can show that you're trying to put things right, you know, it's no point in saying, "Oh, I haven't got a whole of firm risk assessment because I don't know how to do it." At least have a go at doing it and take advice from doing it. But understand what the requirements are of your supervisory body and reach out to them for help. You know, they're all there. There is a requirement that they've got to help you, and that's certainly our experience that they will help you if you do reach out. But there still is that fear that if you reach out and ask a question, it may just, you know, tick the box, or we're going to come in and give you an audit, which isn't necessarily the case.
I've just popped another poll there about who is your AML supervisory body. Realise that there's only 5 or 6 options there, so if you want to pop it in the chat, if you have any other supervisory bodies, that's great. Now, speaking about the audit itself, then, Lucy, and the thing that really, you know, when do you ever buy a wash machine? It's when the wash machine's broken, and you know, to our point, it's a task that never gets done. But when that critical event happens, when that email comes in, saying, "Hey, you're going to get a visit," talk us through that. Well, talk us through what that, without swearing, that "oh crap" moment that email lands. What should be the sort of initial steps that a firm should take when that email comes in, apart from panic?
Apart from panic, well, get over the panic quickly, because that's not going to help you. And I think that is the key thing. You can't do anything to take this away. So get rid of the panic, start sorting yourself out. So I think the best thing to do is get your paperwork organized. They will want to see your whole firm risk assessment, your policy and procedure document, your training records. Make sure they're in a place where you can get them easily to hand. Your client due diligence paperwork, make sure it is to hand, because the more organized you are and the more easily you can answer those questions, you can fulfill their requirements, the calmer you will be in that audit situation, and the smoother it will be. If you are panicking and disorganized, and they say, "I want to see the ID documentation for client X," and you just have to run around an office trying to find a piece of paperwork, that does not give a good impression to the investigator, and that process will take that much longer. So the more organized you can be and systematic, the better. And that's where actually online software comes in. Although we know that there's no legal requirement to use software, FirmCheck and other softwares as well will actually help you get that organized and get it in place. So well worth doing that. Obviously, just check everything's up to date. They will know if you are kind of forging dates and times and things. However, there's nothing wrong with re-reviewing your documentation. Just make sure you've got your previous copies so that they can go back in time and have a look at what you did have as well. But I think yeah, organization is key.
And when Calathea, so someone, you know, approaches Calathea for help, and perhaps yourself, Mike, when you first go into a firm, what's usually your sort of first thing that you witness there? Because I'm guessing they come to you for help and support, and because you're not the supervisory body, you probably see good and bad things. So what's your experience when you know, what's the most common thing that you see when you go in?
I mean, when we first get approached, it's usually because somebody wants to benchmark themselves, or they failed an inspection and they're going to have a re-inspection and they want to make sure they get it right, or they've had that email to say we're coming to see you. The first thing we do is we ask to see a copy of the whole of firm risk assessment and the policies and procedures document to get and that's before we actually start with the audit. So we get that sent to us, and straight away, you know, we can see there's issues. 9 times out of 10, there's issues in relation to that. We then either do an in-person audit or via Zoom, and we go through a series of nearly 80 plus questions with them to try and understand the business, capture what's going on in the business, and establish where they're at with that culture of compliance, and to understand all about that business. I've even found by doing this, and we're not the supervisor, and we find people are open and honest with us. Oh, I've not done that, I've not done the other. But I'm still finding, even though we're there to help people, they are still, in one particular instance, backdating documentation to make it look like they've done something which they haven't done, and trying to basically pull the wool over our eyes as much as anything else when we're there to help. So one thing we say to everybody is, look, even when you get inspected by your professional body supervisor, just be totally honest. Don't start backdating documents. Review your documents and have a version control on your documents to show that you've reviewed it before the auditor came in, which is absolutely fine. But have your past documents there. Don't start backdating documents to show that they were completed 12 months ago, and in fact they were done the day before your audit. So it's so important to have that honesty. And then we just work through a series of questions, see if it correlates to the risk assessments that they've done, and that they've mitigated all the risks in the policies and procedures document. And as I say, we can put our hand on my heart and say all the audits we've done to date, as Calathea, not one would have passed a professional body service audit in relation to usually risk assessments.
And you kind of mentioned, like, they can be honest with you, but they still change the dates. And to be honest, I've seen when we're getting historical doc, I can see the typics on the bit of paper there. As a person, you know, what's is that guilt? Is that sort of shame? Is that sort of like, oh, I know I should be doing this, but I've not been done it, and I'll quickly do it? And then does that kind of lead to apathy, really, of, you know, well, this doesn't really matter to what we're doing, we'll just put any date on it? And how do we get across that kind of sort of behaviour? Yeah, Minnie's quite right there, like a lot of anxiety there. How do we approach the sort of human emotion to that, if that makes kind of sense? Because you'll get it yourself, like a lot of firms going, well, this doesn't matter. This, you know, I can only do what I do. This doesn't matter. So how do we get through that? Because it obviously does matter if you're going out your way to Tipex a bit of thing and change the date, because you know you should be doing it. So how do we sort of get through that human emotion part?
Oh, I think it's really hard. I think I'll go back to the apathy, but I think there is that mention of anxiety. There is, and there are people that are just actually paralyzed by fear of getting it wrong to the point where they can't even start. And I think that needs to be addressed as well, because it's far better as an inspector coming in, they would far rather see something that's not particularly good or well written than something not being there at all. So get it started at least. Have a think about the risks. Don't worry about your English, your grammar, whatever. But at least identify the risks, and then try and mitigate them in your policy and procedure document. As for the apathy, yeah, I think an awful lot of bookkeepers and accountants don't see that it is making any difference. I did a webinar last week on suspicious activity reporting, and went through the stages of that, and it's really clear that I think there are over, or maybe just under 3,000 reports filed a day into NCA. And so this huge number of reports are going into the financial intelligence unit. They are pushing it out to all the law enforcement. They can't come back to the person that's provided that report to say, oh, thank you very much, this is what we're doing with it. And so we don't, as bookkeepers and accountants, we don't see that we are doing this amount of good that is actually going on behind the scenes. So that's just one illustration of actually it is making a difference. You just don't see it. I think within your practice, the apathy has to go, because this is a legal requirement that you have to do AML. And actually, if you're going to do something, just do it well as well, because then it benefits you. So I think there's got to be a mindset change from it being a waste of time to how can it benefit my business? And that could be that you add a fee on for doing it, and therefore you are paid to do it. It allows you as a bookkeeper and an accountant to know your client that much better, so that actually you can possibly upsell services to them. And I think it's all psychological. You've just got to actually think of it in a positive light, and not be negative about it. If you're negative about anything, it's just a pain to do. So try and amend that to a positive, and actually see the benefits.
And Mike, you kind of said that earlier in the webinar, you sold some property and a lawyer charged you. A lawyer usually just bungs on an AML fee for picking up the phone. So why do accountants and bookkeepers not think that they should be doing that? And just you, from a personal point of view, if I can just ask you, like, what did that make you feel like that the lawyer was charging you for that? Like, was it a pain, or did you think, well, actually it's just part of the process, or actually this lawyer's doing the right thing, so I do expect to pay for that? Is that,
I think
what's stopping people doing that, making it a value to their practice?
I think from my perspective, it was a mixture of a lot of those. The fact that, at least they're doing what they should be doing, and at least the fee is shown up front and it's not hidden amongst the rest of it. The ones that I'm aware of, the accountants that are charging a fee, they have it up front. They have it in their letter of engagement to say that a fee will be charged of whatever it may be to ensure compliance with the money laundering regulations. And one particular client was telling me that by being upfront in relation to that, and this fee is charged, and explaining why that they're trying to keep the dirty money out of the sector to identify those that are involved in money laundering. And he was saying to me that the fact that he was doing that, he was praised for doing it, showing, totally transparent. I'm going to charge you X amount of money for doing AML checks, and it's protecting your reputation, my reputation, to ensure that everything is above board. I think from Lucy may have a different or another opinion on this, having been there and done this as an accountant bookkeeper.
Sorry, no. I thought you were going to ask a question then. Not ask for my opinion. What was the question?
So in relation to charging a fee for AML, from a bookkeeper's perspective, your thoughts on charging the fee and being upfront about it?
I think it shows your client a level of professionalism, doesn't it? You are complying with the legislation, shows that to them you will comply with HMRC's timescales, you'll comply with all the rest of the legislation that goes alongside keeping your books in order. So I don't see that it should ever be a problem. The amount you charge might be a sticking point, and I see Debbie saying that is £40 enough regarding the time it takes. How I don't know. To be honest. It depends how long it takes you to deal with that client, what your costs are, depends on what searches you do. You've got to find something that works for you and your clients.
Yeah, now we're getting a bit touchy now. As soon as we mentioned fees, that's when the comments start. But I think Mike, you really say that about culture and a culture change or a culture within the practice. And until I speak to lots of senior partners in firms, and they still work on timesheets, and AML is at the bottom of the timesheet, and it's not a billable task and that kind of thing. But then I also speak to a lot of firms and say, listen, you're doing AML. You do AML in every task that you do when you do a set of accounts and a set of books and things like that. It's just taking it that step further, and to your point, documenting it and putting your thoughts and any concerns that you have in the relevant area, so that you can prove it. And I had an argument with a couple of lads at Accountex who saying, if I see something, I do talk to my client. I do phone them, and I want, I'm not denying that you don't, but can you show me that you've done that? And it's not that you're not saying that they're not doing this and they're not doing the right things. It is just taking it that step further and having a culture of recording it. It's record keeping, really, isn't it? But having a professional, and Lucy, you kind of made that point. If you're going to do it well. Don't do it sort of half baked. So it is that culture again, isn't it? It's not a case of this is not being done. It's just a case of you can kind of do this a little bit better and more organized, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, and I think you're right saying that accountants and bookkeepers, this is the profession. It's the whole ethos of the way that we work is to be on the ball with what is going on, recording the transactions as they happen, in that detail. And so, yeah, you are monitoring your clients all the time. You know exactly what's going on, and therefore it is just a case of actually writing it up. You're already doing it. There's just that bit extra that needs doing an attention and keeping on top of. So I think that's one of the things that people don't realize, that actually lots of the processes that are involved in fulfilling the regulations are already in place within the practice. They just aren't necessarily documented. And it is a matter of just writing it up, making sure that everyone within the firm is doing things consistently with each other, and to a level that is good enough or better than good enough.
Cool. Thank you. So let's try and give some sort of practical tips and advice in, and share some stories of. I know it's going to be hard to, when Mike said hand on heart, not one would pass a supervisor, but when you do go in, you go, these people are close. You know what?
Yeah, there are close ones. They're not all dreadful.
Yeah. So
but there's always areas where improvements can be made. Yeah.
So the ones that aren't dreadful, what kind of sets them apart then? What makes them, doing things slightly better than others? What would you say is
I think, going back to what Lucy said before, they've had a go. They've got a firm-wide whole of firm risk assessment, and they've had a go to identify the risks that their practice is subject to. They've then had a go at doing the policies and procedures document. They've made the effort, and they understand why they're doing it. But again, going back to what I said earlier, but they're not actually doing it and doing it to the standard that they should be doing it at. So it's just providing. I mean, we provide actions at the end of it to say, look, you need to do this, and once you've done that, in our opinion, at this moment in time, you're good to go. We think you would pass an audit. So it's a case of that's what makes them stand out, just having a go. Others will just have not done anything, not done any risk assessments on the clients, so they don't even know the risks to put in the whole of firm risk assessments, and no mitigation of the risks because they've not identified them. So there is quite a broad spectrum of failing, shall I say, and some of those would be found generally compliant with the supervisory body, as opposed to not compliant. So it's just having that, and you can tell straight away when we're speaking to people that they want to do it, they want to get it right, and they've started to have a go. Quite often we'll get a phone call of people, and they'll say, "I've not got anything in place whatsoever. Can you come and do an audit for me? But I want to have a go first." Then at least you're coming to have a look at something, which is great. Have a go, and we'll come and have a check later. So it is that culture of compliance and wanting to do it, and for larger practices, it's got to be from the top down. They've got to instill that on their staff, particularly the relevant staff that need to be trained in all aspects of the money laundering to identify such offences. So it is having that culture of compliance, because at the end of the day, if you get this wrong and you get penalised for it, the professional body supervisors are supposed to name and shame in their annual reports. A lot do name and shame, and reputational damage is huge. Going back to my days in law enforcement, when we were dealing with somebody that was using an accountancy practice to launder money, and the checks hadn't been done sufficiently. That person was arrested. The accountant wasn't complicit, but they just hadn't done what they should have done. So some would say they are complicit. But the following evening in the local paper was ABC Accountancy Limited laundering money on behalf of Mr. Big. Within 48 hours, they lost all their clients. The following week, they had inquiries from numerous people wanting to use them as their accountant, all members of organised crime groups, because they put themselves out there, not willingly, that they were laundering money on behalf of organised crime groups. So they lost all their clients, but they came in the sights of criminals that wanted to use them. And that firm went to the wall. So what I say to people is, yeah, it isn't fee earning if you're not charging a fee. It's the bottom of the pile. I think it should be the top of the pile. Make sure you get this right. And Lucy will say that once you've got a system in place for doing it, it's second nature. It's not as difficult as people think it is. Get that right, and then the rest of your business is protected from that, and your reputation, which a lot of these practices and businesses take a long time to build up reputation. And a lot of people we go and see, they say, "Oh, all my clients come from other clients on recommendations, etc." You've got to think to yourself, if you get this wrong and all of a sudden your name is out there on social media as failing your AML because you're not doing what you should be doing, your reputational damage is done. It's very, very difficult to get it back. So put it at the top of the pile. Get it done today if you're not doing it.
Yeah, the profession is the second most trusted profession in the UK behind medical professionals. And
it is, but if you read that slide that you put up on the beginning, you read that report, you read the supervisory body reports that have come out every year. You know, if you're a layperson reading that, you think, what on earth's going on in this sector? Yeah.
And I'll put my salesman's hat on, and I usually compare it to Michelin star chefs, AML. You know, you've trained your whole life, you've got great kitchen, great staff, the restaurant's full, wine list, money coming in. Do you know what? A Michelin star chef sometimes burns a slice of toast. It's okay to make a mistake, but don't have a dirty kitchen, you know, and clean your kitchen every night, and, you know, little and often, because if health and safety shut your kitchen down for being dirty, that's what follows the chef about, not the fact that you've burnt a slice of toast, you know, once in a blue moon, because we can all do that. Mike, you kind of touched on large practices, and, you know, I can see the audience here, and I, you know, we were kind of speaking off air about a lot of familiar names here. So, you know, I know a makeup of quite a lot of people here, but if we can touch on sort of teams in large practices and you know, the internal knowledge. I think what I find quite a bit, especially as the practices get a little bit bigger, is that, yeah, they might have an AML team or an onboarding team or an admin team, and they're really pretty good at taking ID and verifying ID and using software to verify ID. But when it goes to the risk assessment thing, it's like, oh no, that's that person's job and they should do this. And there's a real disconnect about the process internally about who does what. So have you got any sort of war stories or sort of experiences of when you come in and go, well, you're doing a bit of it in terms of the ID checks, and, you know, you think you're doing your AML there, but you've left the other part. So as businesses grow or as practices grow, how important is it for these knowledge and processes to be connected rather than to let them go? And is your experience the same as mine, that actually as things scale up, the accountability kind of seems to disappear?
Yeah, I think you've got to make sure, and we find this certainly with the larger practice, those who've got standard operating procedures saying exactly what you do from a potential client approaches you right the way through the life cycle of that client, provided they've got a standard operating procedure and policies and procedures about how they deal with things. We're finding that those are the people that are more successful. and they've got that. It's all gelling together rather than being standalone bits of the jigsaw. It all comes together. Everybody knows what their role is. Certainly in the bigger teams, everybody knows what their role is and how to do it. What everybody else's role is, but it's all being fed from a standard operating procedure and workflows. And that's said for obviously the bigger practices, but it's so important that you have that processes in place. And this is why you need the policies and procedures document. What's your policy for onboarding? What's your policy for verification? What's your policy and procedure if you can't verify? What's your policy for if there's any suspicious activity, etc., etc. And that's the beauty of that policies and procedures document. It provides that handrail really through what the business needs to be doing and guides everybody. And this is why, as the legislation says, all your relevant employees need to have sight of the policies and procedures documents so they understand what they are doing. And it's quite straightforward to put in place. I mean, we put these in place for our clients, those that haven't got them and want us to put things in place for them. We will do that. But it's straightforward enough that people can do it themselves. But that in itself builds that culture of compliance, regular meetings with the team to discuss what the policies and procedures are, any issues. Can we tweak it? Can we update it? And it doesn't have to be, it can be part of your Monday morning meeting. If you have a meeting every Monday morning, have it on there as an agenda item and discuss these things. And as we've said before, once you've got, and we're finding this with clients that we've helped 12 months ago now, once you've got something in place, a process in place, a procedure in place, it runs itself to a degree, because a lot of these things that you're expected to do, you do anyway. You do subconsciously. You're doing it all the time. It's just that you're not documenting it and being able to say. It's like we say, if it's not written down, it's not happened. You need to write down why you're doing things, and equally important, why you're not doing things.
Yeah. I think it's important to say as well that although we're talking about large firms, these documents need to be in place for when you're a sole practitioner and don't have any staff and it's just you. You still need to have the written documents. You still need to have those processes and procedures in place. That it doesn't matter if you've got it in your head at the moment. It needs to be on paper.
Yeah, and that's where they struggle with, isn't it? Really, and I really like that. Make it part of your team meeting or your annual or your weekly review of the work that you've just done. Like if AML is not a section, like dedicate 5 minutes to it a week. Just get that culture ingrained in everyone in the process. Okay, so we've got I think we've booked this for another 50 minutes. Really keen for some questions to come in on the chat box. I think I saw one from Suzanne, actually. If no one would have passed a supervisory body audit, what more do you think the bodies could do to help? Now, play fair on the bodies here, guys, but we don't
like to bash anybody, anybody and any supervisory body. But what we would really like to see in the whole AML arena is consistency across the board, so that there isn't that difference between the different supervisory bodies. However, that's not on the cards for the moment, at least. I think the supervisory bodies actually do a good job. There is an awful lot of information on all of their websites. Obviously, Mike and I can't access it all. Lots of it's restricted to the supervised members. But go in, have a look at what's there, and digest what they want. The other thing that we really recommend people do is read the annual report of their supervisory body, because then you understand the angle they are coming from with their supervisory kind of regime, and what they are potentially looking for, what they are finding within the supervised body that you are part of. And so it's a really useful tool to get an idea of kind of the feel of AML within your kind of cohort.
And I think the other thing is make sure that you're aware of and you utilize the CCAB guidance, which is a document that all the supervisory bodies have agreed to follow the guidance. It's been signed off by Treasury. So if you Google CCAB guidance, you'll get a copy of that. A lot of people aren't aware of that document, Also have a look at the National Risk Assessment, because the National Risk Assessment details what the risks are to the accountancy sector and the UK as a whole. And that information that feeds into that National Risk Assessment feeds in from the supervisory body's report, which feeds in from your risk assessment, which ultimately feeds in from the risk assessments you do on your clients. So it forms that pyramid. So it's important that you read that. Again, the National Risk Assessment says that payroll services are high risk, and a lot of people that we speak to are unaware of that. So you've got to make sure that you address that in your whole of firm risk assessment. So it's important that you understand that these documents are out there, and they are on the supervisory body's websites. So, as I say, just understand, as I said right at the beginning, understand what the requirements are of the legislation and your supervisory body, because sometimes they do differ.
Can I ask you just a real practical thing about risk assessments? You were talking about risk assessments there, and one thing that who do you have to do a risk assessment on? So I've got Kevin Lord Limited. What risk assessment needs to be in place for me? I'm the director, sole director of Kevin Lord Limited. What risk assessment should be in place for me? Because this is a common thing that I'm seeing, and you get a lot of pushback on that. So I'm a graphic designer, Kevin Lord Limited, one director, just me. What risk assessment should technically be in place there?
Are you not the accountant? You're a client.
No. I'm a client of the accountant, but
Okay.
but what and you're my accountant, Lucy. What risk assessment, and Mike's coming in to audit you. What should Mike see? What risk assessment have you done
with you as a client? I would have, as I take you on, I would take photo ID and proof of address. I will then check that they actually belong to you, and their date and their valid documents. Because this is one thing we find. If you take documentation, how are you ensuring that it is actually belonging to the person instructing you? I check that you are the sole director. I talk to you and make sure what you say tallies with what I see on Companies House and online. The client risk assessment, I will be checking the way you interact with me, what you are doing as a business, who your customers are. I will look at geographical risk, where you are trading, as in where your offices are, but also where you are selling your goods to. So where are your customers? I will look at how you interact with your customers, how they're kind of paying you, whether and how, and then again, how you pay me. What's the interaction between us? Are you instructing me? Are you using an intermediary to instruct me? So you're looking at geographical risk, your client risk, your transactional risk, delivery channel risk. And there's always a fourth one. I forget which one it is every time. And it's a different one every time. What's the last one, Mike?
So you've got clients, geography, products, transactions, and delivery channels.
There we go. Products and services. What services am I actually supplying you? Am I doing you payroll? Am I providing you TCSP services? Those two are high risk. Accountancy services in themselves are higher risk, but those two particular ones I'm very conscious of. Does it make sense? Am I giving you some services but not other services? So have you got two accountants, and why? So there's all sorts of kind of nuances there. And then Mike would also check that I have done a whole firm risk assessment. So I've identified risks that you bring to my firm. So if I'm offering TCSP services, that is a risk to my firm that my clients are using my firm to anonymize them. So I would need to document that in my whole firm risk assessment. I then need to mitigate it in my policy and procedure document. And then that would affect how I then do my due diligence and ongoing monitoring on you, my client, and it's kind of full circle. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
And Mike, what have I missed off? I missed anything, Mike?
No, I think the only other thing you've got to, which we find in people, that if Lucy is then doing a self-assessment on you as an individual, you are a separate client.
Yeah.
So you've got two clients, so that's a separate risk assessment, because the risk to you as a separate entity is maybe different to you in your business, and which again we're finding quite a lot of the time people aren't doing that. So the risk assessing, as per Lucy said there, but then if you're doing your self-assessment, then that's a totally separate client, new risk assessment in relation to you, etc.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that as well. And I think when something like 97% of the UK, limited companies are sole directors, and a lot of the time, and that part perhaps comes down to pricing again. I see a lot of accountants, saying, "Oh, we'll do your books, and that includes the self-assessment for the director, and it's all in one price." And actually, they're not splitting the work up, because me as an individual, I can go and have a partnership somewhere else, and actually, as an individual, I'm more risky because of that. Never mind my limited company. There, Debbie's asking if she can ask a silly question. Of course you can, Debbie. It's a safe space. Just while you're doing that, I want to share some information about Calathea as well, because as at FirmCheck, we've speaking to clients that have used your services and praise you to the hilt. And likewise, I see a lot of people that come in and go, you need someone to come in and talk to you and really evaluate what you're doing. So on the screen there, I've shared some information about Lucy and Mike and Calathea. Like I said at the start, soon to be award-winning Calathea. No pressure at all. But if I can't stress highly enough how supportive Mike and Lucy are with people that talk to them, and I've had nothing but glowing references there as well. So please click on their website there and find out more about what they're doing. Now, there was a couple of questions that came in there as you were talking. Emily raised a good one of how to encourage a compliance culture rather than staff thinking it's a tick box exercise. Getting pushback. Staff are not keen on asking any more questions to the clients. If I could sort of jump in there, I think this is a tough one, Emily. I think it actually then becomes a people management issue. Are they doing the job that you're hiring them to do? Is the person that's name above the door, that reputation that Mike speaks about, it's your business, it's your firm's business. And if you've got staff not doing what you're telling them to do and are treating it as a tick box exercise, you maybe need to come down a little bit harder, if that makes sense. Or do you maybe put it as part of their annual review process or training, onboarding training, that kind of thing, and really showing that they are probably doing it, like Lucy and Mike have said, you are doing AML, you do interrogate the transactions that come through. It is your job, but actually it's just taking it that next level and documenting.
I think with that one as well, why are the staff not willing to ask questions of the clients? Is it for fear of annoying the clients? And do they know from experience that it's going to annoy the clients? And if the clients are getting annoyed at being asked questions about their transactions, why is that? And actually, do you get to the point where actually, because the client isn't answering you, are there issues there? Is there a suspicion actually forming there at all? So I think potentially there's a bigger picture as to why are your staff not asking the questions? Is it just an HR problem, or is it that actually there's a problem with the client? And it's probably a bit of both. So I think yes, but you just need to have a think more about what that is. I think the other thing to remember with the culture of compliance is that your staff mustn't be, and the senior management mustn't see the financials of the business ahead of compliance. So the fear of upsetting a client or upsetting your senior management because you're questioning something about a favorite client or a good fee earner mustn't actually detract from actually doing the job, doing AML. So I think that's an important one to remember as well.
Debbie is always engaging on our events, so, and she did say, "Can I ask a silly question?" and went ahead and asked it. So, I'm determined to ask hers. I'm going to ask you both just for one, if you could give everyone on the call just one tip on, or one thing that they can do to increase their confidence and to have as big an impact as possible. So I'll come to you in 20 seconds. Apart from hitting follow Calathea on LinkedIn, because you'll hear when they win the award on Thursday, but you'll hear all the marvelous work that they do in the background, other webinars, people that they talk to as well. But in terms of Debbie's question, if high risk in the client, and let me see that. If high risk, can you guys see that question?
You've got to read the next one as well.
Oh yeah, sorry.
So yeah, it jumps over Lisa, who asked a good question, which we can answer in a second. So Mike, it's about high risk third countries really. If high risk in the client matter risk assessment, so if they are classed as high risk, even if you have mitigation, will it still be rated as high risk? So if you've done your risk assessments on the client and they come out as high risk, and then you mitigate that risk, it doesn't bring their risk rating down. It just means that if they are problematic, you are more likely to spot it and do something about it. So no, it doesn't actually get rid of the risk at all, and it doesn't lower their risk rating. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, because we've seen it in practice where people will risk assess their clients on software and then don't like the answer, so amend the risk rating, but actually it's not changing anything. It's just you can write in your risk assessment, your whole firm risk assessment, that you don't have so many high risk clients, but that's just disguising the issue. So yeah, they don't stop being high risk. Your mitigation is just that you will identify if they are doing something that they shouldn't be doing.
Okay, thank you. I agree. And if a client is a sole trader, would you do a separate assessment with the company and the self-assessment as well?
No, because they're the same legal entity. They can be combined in one risk assessment.
Fantastic. Okay, 2 minutes to go. Like I say, I can hopefully give you 30 seconds to think about what your number one golden tip would be to each. I'll go to you, Mike. Well, if the people today log off and do one thing, like I say, apart from follow you guys on LinkedIn, what's the one thing that they could do to have the biggest impact? You know, in the next half hour, it's lunchtime. What's the one thing that they can go and do?
I think one of the most important things I say to people, and it's wrong just to give me one shot at this, because I've got a couple I could say, but cool. is to understand when you're risk assessing your clients and onboarding your clients, understand what normal is. Once you understand what normal is and identify normal, when anything changes, you know what the abnormal is, and you'll know that something's wrong straight away. That's a flag to you that there's something wrong. If you really know your client and understand your client, then it becomes a little bit easier then if all of a sudden something changes. If you don't know what the norm is, how do you know when something becomes abnormal? And the second one, because I'm going to throw a quick one in as well, ensure that your social media footprint, your website, etc., reflects your business, because that will be checked. And recently I've asked a client for details of a client that's provided a testimonial on the website, and they held their hand up and said all 10 testimonials on the website were fictitious, and they've made them up to make them look good. Don't do that. So just make sure that everything you do is above board and honest, and then it reflects your business truly, because you will get caught out.
Okay, my turn. And actually, if you were going to go away to lunch now, one thing I'd really say is, as you make your sandwich, whatever, have a think about where your documentation is. Because how organized are you really? You might think you have it all, but do you know where it is? And once you realize that actually maybe you don't, you'll go and sort it out, and you will realize there are gaps in it as well. So it won't make you compliant, but it will make you start thinking about it.
Cool. Excellent.
Kevin, can I have another one?
Yeah. Why not?
You're so
Why not?
greedy, Mike.
Just come to mind then. If you're going to use templates from wherever you're going to use templates, make sure that they reflect your business. For the simple reason, again, recently we've had one where somebody was identifying and mitigating risks that their business didn't have. They didn't provide the service that they were mitigating, and they went to all sorts of long lengths, how they were mitigating it, etc., and they didn't even provide that service and never intended to. So just make sure that you tailor the template to your business. Templates are great, but they've got to work for your business.
Excellent, thank you. And I think I say this to a lot of people: it's your risk assessment, it's your risk policies, it's your business at the end of the day, and no one else will look after it. It's yours. And Hamish, who's our chairman, Hamish Edwards, his number one advice to all accountants and bookkeepers there is your number one client should be your business. And you should prioritize that and make sure that it's all there. The feedback there is already coming in. Such good advice, brilliant session. Thanks for all, very helpful. You've got the links to follow Lucy and Mike. Please do look out for more events like this that we're doing at Firm Check. I think there's a link on there about how our software can help you manage that in one place. But first and foremost, look out for the education material and the information that we're trying to give, because first things first, we need to make sure that you're all confident and happy and understand what you need to do, and then we'll try and help you do that there. So all that's left for me to do, Adam saying I will take these tips into our audit in 2 weeks. Good luck, Adam.
Good luck.
And the thing is, we're saying good luck as if it's, like, you've got it, you'll be fine, just do the simple things well and do them often, really. Thank you, guys. A pleasure as always. Good luck on Thursday at the award show. Are you both going to it?
Well, no, we're not, unfortunately. No. But we will be online following it.
As will I be then. So good luck. I'm top 10, I think we said. Fictitious testimonials. We'll get away with top 10. So that won't be fictitious at all. No, thank you very much. Please, like I say, follow Mike and Lucy on LinkedIn. There's always a source of great information there. Really helpful, really engaging guys. We love working with them, and I hope you found that useful as well. And you can see the feedback in the comments area as well. So thanks very much for your time, and have a good afternoon.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.